tucked away in the Catskills of New York, a teenage Mike Tyson dreaming of greatness would look to old fight films for inspiration. The young historian studied and learned from the champions of the past, and no fighter had a greater influence on the young Tyson than Jack Dempsey. From his menacing scowl to his haircut and attire, everything he did was an homage to his boxing hero. The original little man that battered giants, the Manassa Mauler, was savagery personified. Rainy Day Boxing brings you Jack Dempsey, a boxing legend.
I love Jack Dempsey. Jack Dempsey is a very, very vicious man, ferociously savage.
So what you're saying, Mike, is that you regard Jack Dempsey as one of the really great fighters.
Oh man, I'm crazy about Jack Dempsey. Because of his ferocious intensity. There's no one like him. No one like him.
Born 1895 in Manassa, Colorado, one of 13 children, Jack was raised in poverty. Determined to emerge from a life of struggle and make a name for himself, Dempsey left home in his teenage years and began his days as a traveling hobo. Jack made his living brawling men in western saloons for money. As a child, he developed his skills as a boxer by fending off bullies who teased him for his high-pitched voice, so by the time he was a teenager, fighting was all too natural to him. By clinging onto the brake beams underneath freight trains, Dempsey traveled the West, visiting all the mining towns and challenging the biggest man he could find to a dust-up. With a knack for fighting, his fists were the tools he used to survive.
In comes this rough and tumble man from the West, a fierce puncher, a man who has been through the jungles. He has lived under the worst possible circumstances, and he comes in and he proceeds to knock out people. That's impressive. And so his reputation was built on the basis of his prowess as a heavy-hitting, rough, tough Manassa Mauler.
He's been fighting for years. People don't know. He's been fighting as a hobo for years. Losing, winning, getting knocked out, having hundreds of fights. And his experience is so vast.
When I was young, I got knocked down plenty, Jack Dempsey would later recall. I wanted to stay down, but I couldn't because I had to collect that $2 for winning. I had one fight when I was knocked down 11 times, but got up to win. I had to get up. I was hungry. Someday, if you haven't eaten for 2 days, you'll understand.
For his fighting in saloons on sawdust floors, he was making a meal. The only fight he ever was knocked out in, he hadn't eaten in 4 days.
Turning pro at age 19, Jack began climbing the ranks, sometimes fighting up to 21 times a year. By the time he was 24 years old, Dempsey had racked up 26 first-round knockouts, 2 of which were against the top 2 contenders. Jack had earned a title shot. Then champion Jess Willard was a giant of a man and was the heavy favorite to beat the rough-necked challenger. It was a modern-day adaptation of David against Goliath, and it unfolded to be the worst beating in boxing history.
He went after Jess Willard right away, like a panther on a huge elephant. He got right on him, and he just beat the daylights out of him. I don't think Willard hit Dempsey once. He just went after him, and he could kill that man.
Yeah, look at the combination right here. This is what made Jack Dempsey such exciting and a great fighter. Just the ferociousness and waiting for his opponent to get up like a tiger. And it's rounds like this that made the public love Dempsey so much, and this is why I love him so much.
Dempsey is all over the champion, throwing lefts and rights to the head, and Jess is down again. The moment Willard's knees are off the canvas, the challenger continues to pound away his man. Willard stumbles hopelessly across the opposite side of the ring, while the challenger is relentlessly in pursuit. Dempsey pounds Willard to the canvas for the 6th time. How can the champion keep getting up? Never has a champion taken such punishment, and Jess goes down for the 7th time here in round 1.
At the end of 3 rounds, Willard has suffered a broken jaw, 2 fractured ribs, and 5 missing teeth. Jack Dempsey is heavyweight champion of the world.
An icon was born. It was the dawn of the roaring 20s, and Dempsey's reign as boxing's greatest draw card was just getting started. Jack and his team commercialized the sport. His bouts were an entertainment extravaganza, bringing in boxing's first $1 million gate. Today there is no greater draw in boxing than Anthony Joshua, who regularly fills up football stadiums pulling in crowds of 90,000 people. Jack Dempsey would have mammoth stadiums specially made for his fights that pulled crowds of up to 120,000 spectators. Jack gained the same idolatry in his era as Tyson did in the 80s, and like Mike, Dempsey was depicted in a bad light by the media. He was stigmatized as a draft-dodging slacker who avoided the First World War.
The draft-dodging stories that would plague Dempsey throughout his career emerged.
Jack got a bad rap in World War I, but he had a very sharp manager named Jack Kearns. Kearns had him appear at a working site, and they had him with a sledgehammer in his hand and these working clothes on, except his patent leather shoes were showing underneath the pants. It made very bad press for Jack.
But that couldn't keep the fans away, as the public were enthralled by his wild, almost rampaging approach. Dempsey had a profound change on the fight game. Previously, fighters were stiff and tentative, rarely throwing punches and combinations. Boxing was safety first, and the fans were very welcoming to this new, aggressive champion.
An enraged Dempsey storms right back. Turbo drops.
And Dempsey lands a left hook that throws the younger man.
And as we can see, Dempsey was just a savage puncher. I think any punch he threw could take you out. He just threw punches with bad intentions.
The savagery that Dempsey displayed had never been seen in a boxing ring before. He was a killer.
And it's down. A left hook to the jaw, followed by two rights to the body. A terrific power combination.
Turbo is down again.
Dempsey was a fighter. He came in advancing, bobbing and weaving, ready to tear his opponent apart. You could see his eyes, they were blazing. Couldn't wait to get to his opponent.
He would do anything to win. He was just a mean old critter, as they say.
Dempsey is after it. A sharp left, right, and Carpentier is down. Suddenly, at the count of 9, Carpentier leaps to his feet. 5 seconds later, Carpentier is down for good.
And Dempsey would crouch and go low, and he was sort of like a force of nature. Basically wanted to kill his opponent and rush across the ring, and people had never seen anything quite like that before. Boxing was more of a gentleman's sport before Dempsey.
Jack Dempsey stands out amongst the best. I mean, this was one man that electrified the crowd. He was like a volcano erupting. He left the people gasping for breath.
This was excitement. This wasn't safety first. This was safety last. Excitement was the name of the game, and Dempsey was feeding it.
Mike, they say that Jack Dempsey changed the face of the sport forever with a style that the public had never seen before. What was so unusual about Jack Dempsey?
Well, Jack Dempsey had the most unique distinction of being such a whirlwind, action-packed fighter because of the fighter just a little bit before him was very conservative fighters, and Dempsey was just an action-packed fighter, a fighter that the people loved to see, and they weren't used to that type of fighting, and America fell in love with him.
Jack Dempsey was a victim of his own success. As champion, he didn't fight often, defending his title only 6 times in 7 years. During his inactivity, he attempted to become a movie star to try to change his public image. Becoming civilized among the Hollywood elites, Dempsey was slowly losing the fighting spirit that took him to the title. And while he was busy making public appearances, Tunney, the most threatening foe of his entire career, was on the rise.
In the early rounds, Tunney seemed intimidated by the ferocity of Dempsey's assault. Later, the challenger would acknowledge, "I had the feeling that he literally wanted to kill me, and I never had such an impression with any other opponent." But as the rounds went by, conditioning and science began to prevail over brute force.
From the beginning of the fight, it becomes evident that Tunney has done his homework. His countless hours of watching films of Dempsey have prepared him for every lunge and rush of the champion.
The immense crowd is surprised that Tunney has obviously planned to take the fight right to Dempsey. Tunney continues to pile up points.
Tunney's superior boxing ability thwarted Dempsey's rushes. He was a counter-puncher, and Dempsey would rush in, throwing his punches rather wildly. In the first round, hit him with a right that jarred Dempsey.
Tunney continues to outbox and out-hit the great Jack Dempsey. Dempsey's taking a pretty good beating up to now. His face is badly swollen, right eye is cut and closed.
This is a tiring champion, repeatedly being beaten to the punch. It looks like Dempsey is the one in danger of being KO'd.
Boxing brilliantly, Tunney captured the heavyweight championship with unanimous decision over the Manassa Mauler.
Tunney was the new heavyweight champion of the world. Jack Dempsey was a disappointed and exhausted fighter.
Though many experts predicted that the loss to Tunney was the end of his career, the 31-year-old Dempsey did not agree. He wanted a return bout. and win back his title. The second fight gets underway before more than 100,000 spectators, the majority certain that Dempsey will win back the crown.
Tunney dominated the early rounds, but in round 7, the tide dramatically turned.
Dempsey lands a potent right-hand counter, follows up with a series of 7 devastating punches. Tunney goes down for the first time in his career. Referee Dave Barry points for Jack to move to a neutral corner. Only then does he begin the count. Instinctively, Dempsey stays nearby. 5 seconds have elapsed before referee Barry is ready to begin the count. Gene looks hurt, dazed as the count begins. But here at the official count of 4, when 9 seconds have actually elapsed, he is looking at the referee and picks up the numbers. Tunney is up at the referee's count of 9. Unabashedly, he gets on a bicycle to stay away from the rampaging Dempsey.
Tunney was knocked down in the 7th round, but many believe it was the only round he lost.
And what nobody remembers is Tunney knocks Dempsey down in the 8th round.
Tunney has taken complete charge, bruised and exhausted. Jack Dempsey seems at the verge of being knocked out for the first time in 10 years. There's the bell. The fight is over. Gene Tunney overwhelmingly the winner.
That 7th round, the long count, and it is still probably one of the most famous moments in all of sports.
Dempsey's lavish lifestyle had caught up with him when met with a hungry, more determined challenger. But in defeat, Jack had finally found his place in the hearts of the people. Not long after, realizing his best years were behind him, Dempsey retired. Very few fighters achieved the popularity of Jack Dempsey. He was the first fighter to gain superstar status. The savage treatment of his opponents had the nation begging for more, and his rugged good looks and humble beginnings made him a working-class hero. Jack Dempsey emerged from poverty and made something out of himself, and will forever have his greatness preserved.
Maybe one of the greatest gate draws in the history of sports.
When Dempsey retired, they retired the title champ. That's how great he was.
Do you see anything in your own fighting that compares with Dempsey?
I would be a privilege, like everyone compare me to him, but I know deep inside there's no one like Jack Dempsey.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe.